For tourists in Peru, it's a good idea to learn some phrases in Spanish. This is really well appreciated in all of Latin America. You'll be universally loved and admired in Peru and anywhere else where Spanish is spoken. Since very few tourists do this, they won't make fun of your accent or errors you make trying to speak their language. They will really appreciate it. Remember also, you can use Google Translate to help you learn Spanish. And plus, there are thousands of YouTube videos that will help you learn Spanish. Spanish is spoken by nearly 500 million people around the world. The US has the second highest number of Spanish speakers in the world, with somewhere over 52 million. Mexico is the only country in the world that has more Spanish speakers than the US. Spanish is considered a mother tongue in 21 countries on 4 different continents around the world. You can travel to a Spanish-speaking country without any knowledge of Spanish, of course, but that travel experience won't compare with the adventure you will have of traveling knowing some of the language. Not knowing any Spanish at all means you'll likely only get to visit the typical places that they take all the tourists. If you know some Spanish, it will let you interact with some of the people and discover some of the real local culture and become a part of it. Some studies have even shown that learning a new language helps your memory, keeps your mind sharp, and can reduce mental deterioration as we all age. It's not really necessary to become fluent in Spanish. Only know some words and phrases and how to pronounce them in order to be understood. This really is a very good idea whenever you travel internationally, not just to Spanish-speaking countries. You know, things like thank you, how are you, good morning, please, so on. Things like that are good to know in any language where you travel. In this brief lesson, we will discuss pronunciation of Spanish compared to English, and then we will cover some of the common phrases that are useful for travelers to Peru and other Spanish-speaking countries. I suggest that you also get a good guidebook, and in the back they always have a glossary of Spanish terms, so you can also refer to that. But first, a few examples to answer this question. So you say you don't know any Spanish. Well, did you ever get into your Ford Mustang to drive down Fletcher Avenue because you are an aficionado of alligator barbecue with salsa? Did you ever take your buckaroo and vigilante amigos with savvy renegades to the stockade in the plaza of the pueblo? Then sit in the patio, watching out for any desesperados fighting mano a mano in a guerrilla war, trying to hit a bonanza. The bizarre wrangler with his spaniel and chihuahua march in to create a stampede that cinches the victory. Then he drives away in his Ford Bronco to eat some albino armadillo and with pimento at a fiesta with macho stevedores. They all smoke cigarettes and reefers, have a chiquita banana, and then they take a siesta. Then someone says vamos, they are all rounded up in the corral and sent to the Huscow for all their pecadillos. Hasta la vista, baby. So the point here is that these were 7 sentences, 43 English words that are derived from Spanish words. The point is also that Spanish is a lot easier to learn than many other languages. For English speakers, there's a lot of common vocabulary. About 30% to 40% of words in English have a related word in Spanish that has roughly this similar sound, a similar meaning, and looks about the same, called cognates. In learning Spanish, these are your friends, and they will help you out and steer you in the right direction most of the time. Total fluency in Spanish is not really necessary to visit a Spanish-speaking country, but the more language you know, the more you will enjoy the adventures in your trip. The ease of learning Spanish for English speakers. Spanish spelling of words is extremely consistent, very much unlike French, for example. Spanish vowels are very pure. They're spoken more crisply and they're much shorter than English vowels. In English, we tend to draw out our vowels. This is what is known as a drawl. Sometimes a syllable with a vowel in American English, we speak them so slowly they can become 2 syllables. A famous example, of course, is in the Southern grits. Sometimes when spoken, this comes out gree-its, like 2 syllables. But we also tend to say things like hello. We add an U sound at the end of the O. We may not even notice this, but Spanish speakers do, and it's hard for them to replicate this if they're trying to learn English. But the vowels don't have those additional vowel sounds added to it. They're very short. Different from English, all nouns are defined as either masculine or feminine. This is not something done in English. It's done for ships, perhaps. They are always feminine, and pets that we call by their designated genders. But in Spanish, like in many other languages, they do have genders for their nouns, and they're random. But in Spanish, there's a general rule. Almost all words that end in O are masculine. Almost all nouns that end in A are feminine. There's a few exceptions to this, but that's a good general rule. While this is more complicated than in English, it's easier to tell the gender of nouns in Spanish with these rules than it is in French, German, or some other languages. Verbs. Like in all Romance languages, those derive from Latin. In Spanish, there are verb conjugation tables for Spanish, which in English we pay very little attention to. English just uses a few different verb forms. I am, you are, we are, they are. The only one different is am. In Spanish, though, there's verb conjugations with a different verb for every first, second, and third person and plural. Each verb is different according to the subject or the person. Spanish has another idiosyncrasy of the upside down exclamation mark and upside down question mark at the front of a sentence, in addition to the regular one at the end. It's the only language that I know that does this. These upside down marks advise the reader in advance if a statement is going to be a question or an exclamation. In English, we don't know that until we get to the end when we finally see if there's a question mark or not. So this actually can help a lot, especially in a long question. And just a couple of examples of how these are used in Spanish. If you say, ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo te llamas? There's an upside down question mark before these questions. ¿Qué tal just means how are you? ¿Cómo te llamas? What is your name? In Spanish, the noun comes before the adjective in Spanish. So in English, we say the red house, but in Spanish, we say la casa roja. Casa, of course, house is the noun. In English, there sometimes can be some confusion over what is being talked about as red. In Spanish, it is very clearly stated in advance of the adjective which describes the noun. Similar to many other languages like German or French, in Spanish, there are informal and formal verb forms for you, tú and usted. Tú is for close acquaintances, younger people, and usted is for strangers, people who are older, or those that you've just barely met. Now, these two different verb forms used to exist in English, the informal and formal. We still hear this some. We've probably all heard it, wherefore art thou Romeo? Well, thou is a form of you. It's the informal form of you. Also expressions like it tolls for thee and thou goest in works of Shakespeare's plays. These were all written before 1613, and some of these examples also come from the King James Bible that was translated in the early 1600s. Since that time, we haven't really used the informal forms, but in Spanish, German, French, many other languages, it is still used. So in English, we only have a few different verb forms. But in Spanish, it is different. Unlike in English, there's a different word for each verb form depending on the subject. This is true of every verb in Spanish, as it is for many other languages too. There are patterns for these different verb forms that must be learned, but there's just a few patterns, and the only exception then are a few irregular verbs. But it's different from English. It's because in English we don't really have to worry about that too much.